It's teaching countries in the region that they can reach across the borders.
Can Russia replace the U.S. in Niger? Russia is in action, and the U.S. is under threat. After replacing the U.S. in most of the sectors, Russia has now gone serious. Recently, Russian soldiers breached an airbase housing U.S. forces in the capital city of Niamey. However, the question arises of how this would impact Africa from a broader perspective. Is this eminent partnership between the U.S. and Russia beneficial for Africa, or is it something to be concerned about? Let's find out. Africa often emerges as a crucible where competing powers vie for influence and strategic advantage. Recent events in Niger have thrust this reality into the spotlight once again, as Russian soldiers breached an airbase housing U.S. forces in the capital city of Niamey. This brazen incursion has ignited fresh tensions and raised pressing questions about the future geopolitical dynamics in West Africa. The incident epitomizes the complex interplay of interests, alliances, and rivalries that define the modern geopolitical landscape. Against the backdrop of historical entanglements and ongoing power struggles, the presence of Russian troops alongside their American counterparts highlights the high stakes involved and the potential for localized conflicts to escalate into broader confrontations. So, what has encouraged this recent action by Russia? To grasp the significance of the recent incident in Niger, it's essential to embark on a journey through the annals of history, tracing the geopolitics that has shaped the African continent. Africa, often termed the forgotten continent in global geopolitics, has long been a battleground for competing powers seeking to assert dominance, exploit resources, and expand their spheres of influence. Let's start with how Russia's alignment with Africa started when the U.S. was already influential. Russia's historical involvement in Africa dates back to the Cold War era, when it engaged in ideological battles and proxy conflicts with the United States for control and influence over African nations. During this period, the Soviet Union, as Russia's predecessor, established close ties with several African countries, providing military assistance, economic aid, and ideological support to various liberation movements and socialist regimes. One of the most notable examples of Russian involvement in Africa was its support for anti-colonial movements in countries such as Angola, Mozambique, and Ethiopia. In Angola, for instance, the Soviet Union provided military aid to the Popular Movement for the Liberation of Angola (MPLA) in its struggle against Portuguese colonial rule, and later against rival factions backed by Western powers. But how was Russia able to make its place in Niger when America was already there? In contrast to Russia's historical involvement, the United States' military presence in Niger is a more recent development driven primarily by counterterrorism efforts and regional security concerns. Following the rise of terrorist groups such as Boko Haram and Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb (AQIM) in the Sahel region, the U.S. has sought to bolster its military presence in Niger to combat these threats and support regional stability. The U.S. military's footprint in Niger expanded significantly in the early 2010s, culminating in the construction of Airbase 101 near Niamey, the capital city. This airbase, equipped with modern facilities and infrastructure, serves as a key logistical hub for U.S. military operations in the region, including intelligence gathering, surveillance, and drone strikes targeting terrorist elements. So, the incident in Niger is emblematic of broader geopolitical competition unfolding across the African continent, where global powers vie for influence, access to resources, and strategic advantage. Africa's vast natural wealth, including oil, minerals, and arable land, has made it an attractive target for countries seeking to secure their economic and geopolitical interests. Now, let's talk about this incident. The recent intrusion of Russian soldiers into Airbase 101, which houses U.S. forces in Niger, has sent shockwaves through diplomatic circles and raised serious questions about regional security and the balance of power in West Africa. Reports of Russian soldiers entering Airbase 101, located near Niamey's Diori Hamani International Airport, initially surfaced amid escalating tensions between the U.S. and Russia on the global stage. The presence of Russian troops at the airbase, alongside their American counterparts, represents a significant escalation in the geopolitical competition unfolding in Africa. According to eyewitness accounts and intelligence reports, Russian soldiers arrived at the airbase under the pretext of a joint military exercise with Nigerian forces. However, their sudden appearance caught U.S. officials off guard and raised suspicions about Moscow's true regional intentions. The incident in Niger must be viewed within the broader context of regional security dynamics and the evolving geopolitical landscape in West Africa. Niger, a landlocked country situated in the Sahel region, has become increasingly pivotal in the fight against terrorism and insurgency, particularly following the rise of extremist groups such as Boko Haram and AQIM. Here's a reminder to please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black culture, history, civilization, and identity. Let's continue now. The U.S. military's presence in Niger, primarily focused on counterterrorism operations and intelligence gathering, has drawn scrutiny from various quarters, including Nigerian authorities and local populations. The decision by Niger's junta rulers to expel U.S. forces from the country last year further strained relations with Washington and created a power vacuum that other actors, including Russia, sought to exploit. In the wake of the incident, responses from relevant stakeholders have varied, reflecting the complex geopolitical dynamics at play. While the United States expressed concern over the presence of Russian troops at Airbase 101, it has sought to downplay the significance of the intrusion and reassure allies of its commitment to regional security. U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, in a statement addressing the concerns, emphasized that the Russian troops were confined to a separate compound within the airbase and did not have access to American forces or equipment. What impact will this sudden action have? The intrusion of Russian soldiers into Airbase 101, alongside U.S. forces in Niger, carries significant geopolitical implications that reverberate far beyond the borders of West Africa. The presence of Russian soldiers at Airbase 101 underscores Moscow's strategic ambitions and growing assertiveness on the African continent. Under President Vladimir Putin's leadership, Russia has sought to reassert its influence globally and expand its presence in regions traditionally dominated by Western powers, including Africa. Russia has recently pursued a multifaceted African strategy, leveraging military cooperation, economic partnerships, and diplomatic initiatives to enhance its foothold. Moscow's engagement with African countries, characterized by arms sales, infrastructure development projects, and energy agreements, reflects its desire to cultivate strategic alliances and access valuable resources. The intrusion of Russian soldiers into Airbase 101 can be seen as part of this broader strategy, which aims to showcase Moscow's military capabilities, project power in strategic regions, and challenge the dominance of Western powers, particularly the United States. The incident in Niger has exacerbated existing tensions between the United States and Russia, further straining relations already marred by disputes over issues such as Ukraine, Syria, and election interference. The presence of Russian troops at a military base housing U.S. forces represents a direct challenge to American interests. It underscores the intensifying competition between the two powers on the global stage. While the U.S. and Russia have sought to downplay the incident's significance and avoid confrontation, the underlying geopolitical rivalry between the two countries remains a destabilizing force in Africa and beyond. The incident highlights the potential for localized conflicts to escalate into broader geopolitical confrontations with global security and stability implications. One important question here is why Russia took such an action. Russia's recent decision to deploy soldiers to Airbase 101 in Niger has sparked intense speculation and interpretation among international observers. This move symbolizes Russia's enigmatic foreign policy approach, characterized by opacity and strategic ambiguity. While the motives behind this deployment remain mysterious, analysts have put forth several theories to decipher Russia's intentions. One prominent interpretation suggests Russia's decision to station troops at Airbase 101 underscores its aspiration to assert influence in strategically significant regions. By establishing a presence in Niger, a country situated in the heart of West Africa, Russia may seek to challenge the traditional dominance of Western powers in the region. This move could be perceived as a calculated effort to project power and expand Moscow's geopolitical footprint beyond its traditional spheres of influence. Furthermore, deploying Airbase 101 could be part of Russia's broader strategy to enhance its African military presence. In recent years, Moscow has intensified its engagement with African nations through various means, including military cooperation agreements, arms sales, and diplomatic initiatives. By establishing a foothold in Niger, Russia may aim to cultivate closer ties with other African countries and secure access to valuable resources and markets on the continent. Additionally, some analysts argue that Russia's deployment to Air Base 101 demonstrates its military capabilities and readiness to respond to emerging security challenges in the region. With the rise of terrorism, insurgency, and other threats in the Sahel region, Moscow may view its presence in Niger as a means to contribute to regional stability and counter-terrorism efforts. This interpretation aligns with Russia's broader narrative of positioning itself as a key player in global security affairs. However, amidst these speculations, the true motives behind Russia's decision to deploy soldiers to Air Base 101 remain elusive. Moscow has offered limited official statements, leaving room for conjecture and interpretation. Nevertheless, the deployment underscores Russia's proactive approach to advancing its strategic interests on the global stage, even as it continues to navigate complex geopolitical dynamics and relations with other major powers. But let's broaden our perspective and see this situation from the outside. What impact will all this have on Africa? The incident of Russian soldiers entering Air Base 101 in Niger is not an isolated event, but rather a symptom of broader geopolitical dynamics shaping the African continent. Why are nations fighting to influence Africa? Africa has increasingly become a focal point in the geopolitical strategies of major global powers. The continent's abundant natural resources, diverse markets, and strategic location have rendered it a highly sought-after arena for countries seeking to assert their influence and secure long-term advantages. One of Africa's primary attractions lies in its vast reservoirs of natural wealth. From oil and gas reserves to precious minerals like gold, diamonds, and rare earth elements, Africa boasts a wealth of resources coveted by industrialized nations for economic development and energy security. The competition to access these resources has intensified as emerging economies, particularly in Asia, increasingly rely on African commodities to fuel their rapid growth. Moreover, Africa's expansive arable land presents significant opportunities for agricultural investment and food security. As global population growth places greater pressure on food production systems, countries are eyeing Africa's fertile soils and favorable climate conditions as a potential solution to feeding their populations and mitigating the impact of climate change on food production. Beyond its natural resources, Africa's burgeoning consumer markets offer immense potential for economic expansion and investment. The continent's youthful and rapidly growing population represents a lucrative market for consumer goods, infrastructure development, and technological innovation. As urbanization rates rise and middle-class incomes increase, African nations become increasingly attractive destinations for foreign investment and trade partnerships. Furthermore, Africa's strategic location at the crossroads of major trade routes and proximity to key maritime choke points endows it with geopolitical significance. Control over sea lanes and access to ports along the continent's coastlines can confer substantial advantages in trade, military projection, and geopolitical influence. As such, major powers are vying for strategic footholds in Africa to safeguard their interests and ensure their continued dominance in global affairs. And what nations are there wanting to align with Africa? China's rise as a major player in Africa, fueled by its economic prowess and ambitious Belt and Road Initiative, has transformed its geopolitical landscape. Through extensive investments in infrastructure projects, trade agreements, and diplomatic outreach, China has sought to deepen its ties with African countries and position itself as a dominant player. Russia, too, has sought to assert its influence in Africa, leveraging military cooperation, economic partnerships, and diplomatic initiatives to cultivate strategic alliances and access valuable resources. The incident in Niger, with Russian soldiers entering an airbase housing U.S. forces, underscores Moscow's efforts to challenge Western dominance and project power in strategic regions. Not only this, but the U.S., seeing its dominance fading away, changed its policy too. And what did they do? The United States, traditionally a dominant player in African affairs, has faced challenges to its hegemony as other powers, particularly China and Russia, have expanded their presence on the continent. The U.S. military's presence in Niger and other African countries reflects Washington's strategic interests in combating terrorism, promoting stability, and safeguarding its economic interests. But that's what they tell us. Let's not forget their interest in African resources. However, shifts in U.S. foreign policy, including a focus on great power competition and a prioritization of strategic rivalry with countries like China and Russia, have raised questions about the future of American engagement in Africa. The decision by Niger's junta rulers to expel U.S. forces from the country last year further underscored the complexities of U.S.-Africa relations and the challenges posed by evolving geopolitical dynamics. The presence of rival powers in Africa, including the recent intrusion of Russian soldiers into Airbase 101 in Niger, has raised concerns about the implications for regional stability and security. The Sahel region in particular has become a hotspot for terrorism, insurgency, and political instability, posing significant challenges to peace and development. The presence of foreign military forces, while ostensibly aimed at combating terrorism and promoting stability, also carries risks of exacerbating local conflicts, fueling resentment, and undermining sovereignty. The incident in Niger highlights the need for coordinated efforts among regional actors, international organizations, and global powers to address the root causes of instability and promote sustainable peace in Africa. China and Russia's growing influence in Africa, characterized by extensive investments, military cooperation, and diplomatic outreach, poses challenges to Western dominance and traditional spheres of influence. Beijing's Belt and Road Initiative and Moscow's strategic partnerships with African countries have enabled both powers to expand their footprint on the continent and challenge Western narratives of development and governance. As Western powers, including the United States and European Union, grapple with internal challenges and shifting priorities, China and Russia have sought to fill the void and position themselves as alternative partners for African nations. By presenting themselves as allies without colonial legacies and promoting a narrative of mutual respect and cooperation, China and Russia have gained traction among African governments seeking to diversify their international partnerships. Now let's talk about the outlook for the future. The intrusion of Russian soldiers into Airbase 101 in Niger has profound implications for the future of Africa's geopolitical landscape and the broader international order. One of the key considerations following the incident in Niger is the potential for either escalation or de-escalation of tensions between rival powers. While the presence of Russian soldiers alongside U.S. forces raises concerns about the risk of confrontation and conflict, diplomatic efforts to diffuse tensions and avoid confrontation may mitigate the likelihood of escalation. Regional actors, including the Nigerian government and other West African countries, will be crucial in shaping the trajectory of events and preventing further destabilization in the region. By promoting dialogue, cooperation, and confidence-building measures, regional actors can contribute to de-escalating tensions and fostering a conducive environment for peaceful resolution. The incident in Niger poses significant challenges for U.S. and Russian foreign policy in Africa and beyond. For the United States, the presence of rival powers in Africa underscores the need to reassess its strategic priorities, engage with African countries on mutually beneficial terms, and strengthen alliances with like-minded partners to counteract the influence of competitors. Conversely, Russia may seek to capitalize on the incident to bolster its image as a global player and expand its influence in Africa. Moscow's ability to navigate the complexities of African politics, forge strategic partnerships, and leverage military cooperation may shape its future engagement on the continent and its broader geopolitical ambitions. What is the policymakers' job now? In light of the incident in Niger, policymakers and stakeholders must adopt a proactive and forward-thinking approach to address the underlying challenges and opportunities in Africa's geopolitical landscape. Enhancing cooperation among regional organizations, international institutions, and global powers is essential to address shared challenges and promote collective security and stability in Africa. Diplomatic engagement, dialogue, and conflict resolution mechanisms are also critical for managing tensions, resolving disputes, and preventing conflicts from escalating into broader geopolitical confrontations. Addressing the root causes of instability, including poverty, inequality, and governance deficits, is essential to promote sustainable development and address the underlying drivers of conflict and insecurity in Africa. As we reflect on the implications of the incident in Niger, it is incumbent upon policymakers, stakeholders, and global actors to heed the lessons learned and take decisive action to address the underlying challenges and opportunities in Africa's geopolitical landscape. First and foremost, policymakers must prioritize diplomacy, dialogue, and conflict resolution mechanisms to manage tensions, prevent conflicts from escalating, and foster a conducive environment for peaceful resolution. By engaging in constructive dialogue and forging strategic partnerships, African countries can navigate the complexities of global competition and safeguard their sovereignty and national interests. Secondly, stakeholders must invest in sustainable development, promote inclusive governance, and uphold human rights and the rule of law to address the root causes of instability and promote long-term peace and prosperity in Africa. By investing in education, healthcare, infrastructure, and economic empowerment, African countries can unlock their full potential and build resilient societies capable of withstanding external pressures and internal challenges. Lastly, global actors, including traditional powers, emerging economies, and regional organizations, must collaborate to address shared challenges and promote collective security and stability in Africa. By working together, leveraging each other's strengths, and fostering cooperation and mutual respect, the international community can support Africa's journey towards peace, prosperity, and progress. Do you think the powerful nations wishing to align with Africa will benefit Africa? Why are all nations obsessed with Niger? Let us know in the comments section. Is Russia better than the US? Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If so, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We have decided to bring videos on something nobody talks about: the Black culture, civilization, history, and evidence about how glorious Blacks have been. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.